بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، نحمده ونستعينه ونشكره ونتوب إليه من سيئات أعمالنا، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of here and the hereafter. We praise Him, ask His assistance, and we repent to Him and we thank Him. We repent to Him for the shortcomings of our deed. We greet and salute the Holy Prophet of Islam, the most noble of all prophets, and his pure progenies. Sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our ninth program, or ninth night of the program from the Islamic Center. I pray that you are keeping well, safe, and staying in until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala helps us to overcome the crisis that we have to deal with. يقول الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن الحكيم: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات هن أم الكتاب وأخر متشابهات فأما الذين في قلوبهم زيغ فيتبعون ما تشابه منه ابتغاء الفتنة وابتغاء تأويله وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله والراسخون في العلم. He is the one who has revealed to you the book, Quran. Out of it there are verses that are muhkamat, which of established meaning, which are the principles or the mother verses, and others mutashabihat, whose definite meaning are not stipulated. Those who have perversity in their heart go after mutashabihat, seeking to create discord and interpreting these verses in a way that meet their desire, while no one truly knows of their interpretation or meaning except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and those well grounded in knowledge. Al-Imran, verse number 7. A brief recap, as usual, of the chapter that we covered last night, Surah Al-Kawthar, said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had promised the Holy Prophet of Islam that despite the critique that Quraysh had and their opinion about the Holy Prophet being abtar, which no descendant or there is no posterity to him, as they mocked him, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give him Al-Kawthar, which we debated various interpretations for it. One of them was that Fatima al-Zahra salamullah alayha, because it is through her that the descendant of the Holy Prophet are spread all over the world, while those who mockingly said that the Holy Prophet is going to die and his name is going to be wiped out from history, nowhere to be seen. I also touched upon tafsir, difference between tafsir and ta'wil, because when فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ وَانْحَرْ, there was one opinion that nahr here does not mean the slaughter of a camel or the slaughter of any animal. This is nahr, mean the slaughter of an inner soul or inner ego, that we become detached from being egocentric. The verse that I recited at the beginning, which is Al-Imran 7, certainly talks about a couple of things that are related. First, the verse talks about that there are some verses, some passages within the Holy Quran that they are called muhkam and their meanings are clearly established without shadow of a doubt. You can use the literal or the letter of the word, it's clearly stipulated. And at the same time, there are verses that they are not clearly stipulated, or their meanings are not clearly stipulated. And they are the earlier one called muhkamat, the second one is called mutashabihat. Exactly what mutashabihat and muhkamat means, particularly when it comes to the English translation, there are huge interpretations here. Precise in meaning for muhkamat and ambiguous in mutashabihat. Stated meaning for muhkamat while implied for mutashabihat. Zahir for muhkamat, batin and hidden for mutashabihat. And naturally, once we accepted these designations between muhkam and mutashabih, scholars have said that tafsir deals with the muhkamat and ta'wil deals with mutashabihat. Ta'wil in principle means that literally you provide an explanation about a deeper meaning that the literal sense may not express it. There are close to or over 15 verses in the Holy Quran that talks about ta'wil in one way or the other. Most of these are in Surah Yusuf. When we look at Prophet Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam and the concept of ta'wil of dreams. When people come to him or his own dream, constantly he's talking about ta'wil. There's also one story that ta'wil is being used, Prophet Khidr and his relationship with Prophet Musa when they were supposed to go together, and Prophet Khidr told him that he will not ask any question until he explains to Prophet Musa. And when he constantly asked questions and challenged Prophet Khidr that why did you do this, why did you do that, technically from Prophet Musa's law and legal orientation, it was not acceptable to somehow make a hole in a ship or kill somebody or build a wall which is being crumbled without asking anything in return, particularly when the society or the community did not entertain them as guests. And then Prophet Khidr said, this is the ta'wil of something that you couldn't wait long enough before I explained to you. And there are a number of other verses, including the one that I just recited, Al-Imran number 7. In this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains or stipulates 4 central themes. Number 1, the verse of the Quran, the verses of the Quran or the chapters or the passages of the Quran are divided into muhkam and mutashabih. If you go back to the beginning, هو الذي أنزل عليك الكتاب منه آيات محكمات وأخر متشابهات. That these verses are divided into these 2 categories. The muhkamat must be used as al-Kitab, the mother of the verses and the principle by which we use to shed light on the verses that at least at the surface they are not clear. Only God and those select individual that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted them the knowledge, they have the ability to be able to interpret or ta'wil of mutashabihat. And they also, the Holy Quran, strangely enough, talks about the perverse people that primarily focus on mutashabihat to create discord. So Quran here does not deny, as a matter of fact, is explicit that there are mutashabihat and muhkamat, and explains the relationship or the dynamics between muhkamat and mutashabihat, that the muhkamat should be used as a mother verse, that we use them to explicate and explain verses that may appear to be ambiguous. So these verses, the muhkamat, should be used as a guideline for the ambiguous, not that mutashabihat to be used by themselves independent as muhkamat, as now we have heard a number of people do that. This is where Marhum Allama Tabatabai and few of the other mufassirin, they say this is a classic example of Quran yufassiru ba'da. If you want Quran to interpret and support in the exegesis of its own verses, you have to use the verses of the Holy Quran to interpret other verses. And he gives an example. What he states is a kind of process of deduction and induction and brainstorming with the Quran. Allama Tabatabai says that let us start with one verse. Alam a'had ilaykum ya bani Adam alla ta'budullah, the beginning of the whole process. A'budullah wa la tushriku bihi shay'a. Submit to the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and do not associate with him anything else. That's the first step, the beginning of this process of brainstorming with the Quran. If you look at the purely the text, the first interpretation is that to avoid what we call shirk and polytheism and associating other people or other things with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if that interpretation, you take it and you introduce it back to the Quran and engage another verse. Alam ahad ilaykum ya bani Adam alla ta'budu shaitan. That here ibadah, although it's being used, i'budullah wa la tushriku bihi shay'an, ibadah is being used in reference to the shaitan. So now the whole thing is going to be expanded. It's not just the shirk and polytheism, it's ibadah to shaitan is going to be part of it as well. That's the second process. Then it says that if we were to engage another verse in the Holy Quran, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ, those who use their own ego as their God. They submit to the dictate of the ego and the nafs al-ammara. So now we begin to understand that the verse that says we submit to the A'budullah wa la tushriku bihi shay'an, now we're going to increase, to expand in its meaning to include submitting to our own ego as well. And ultimately, we draw a conclusion from this. وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا is not purely in the context of shirk with polytheism, with everything apart from Allah. This is the concept of Tawheed that we talked about in Surah Al-Ikhlas. Tawheed from an Islamic point of view does not accept any kind of association. Muwahhid means somebody that focuses on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every aspect of his or her life. And then Marhum Allama Tabatabai brings in a concept. It says, yes, there are a number of ahadith and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, inna lil Quran dhahran wa batna. There is, for the Quran has a hidden and an appeared. Wa li batnihi batna. And even the hidden one has a hidden meaning. Ila sab'ati abtun, to 7 hidden layers exist within within understanding of the Holy Quran. This is something that you sometimes impose your own understanding on the Holy Quran, and as it has happened these days, liberal tafsir and ta'wil of Quran. feminist تفسير عن تعبير القرآن، secular تفسير عن تعبير القرآن، fringe تعبير القرآن، cult تعبير القرآن within Islam. This is where we have the verse of the Holy Quran is being selectively chosen and then one's own ideas imposed on it. That's not what the Quran wants to do with regard to tafsir zahir and batin. There is a clear designation that you use the verses that have clear meanings as a support, as a mother verse for the clarification of the others. As far as one of the points that Quran وما يعلم تفسير وما يعلم تأويله إلا الله والراسخون في العلم. مرحوم Sayyid Khoy in his book about just a single volume about the Holy Quran that he was unfortunately unable to complete, brings two hadith from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq to underpin this notion that not everyone can go and interpret the Quran, or particularly ta'wil, not only just tafsir, the ta'wil in specifically. This is a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam in his discussion with Abu Hanifa. Imam Sadiq asks him, one of the imams of the Sunni school of thought, "Are you the jurist of the people of Iraq?" When he went to Medina to ask few questions. He said, "Yes." The Imam asked, "On what do you base your legal opinion to them?" What is the basis of the juristical opinion that you give people? Or call it fatwa. He replied, "On the book of God and the book of God and the practice and the sunnah of the Holy Prophet." Then Imam asked, "O Abu Hanifa, do you know the book of God as it should be known?" Arrogance. Do you recognize the abrogating verses from the abrogated verses? Nasikh and Mansukh. He said, "Yes." The Imam responded, "Woe unto you, Abu Hanifa. God has placed in none other than those whom He revealed the book this knowledge, and He has not given you even a single word of that knowledge. On what basis do you interpret the verses of the Holy Quran?" Similar kind of approach comes from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir with Qatada, which is the scholar of Basra. He asks him, the Imam asked him, "Are you the jurist of the people of Basra?" He says, "Yes." "So they claim." The Imam said, it has reached me that you interpret tufassir al-Quran." He said, "Yes." The conversation goes on until the Imam says, "O Qutaba, if you explain the Quran on the basis of your own opinion, then indeed you are doomed, and those who would listen to you are doomed as well. And if you purely rely on few ahadith in the interpretation of the Quran, both again, you and those who listen to you are doomed." Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given the Quran is known to those to whom it has been addressed, and you are none of them. So when it comes to the issue of tafsir, only the knowledgeable have the right to go for tafsir, and the ones that are able to use Quran rather than impose their own meaning on it. Let's stop here. Inshallah, we will have a chance later that we explain this even further. The chapter that we want to focus upon tonight, Surah Al-Ma'un. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أرأيت الذي يكذب بالدين فذلك الذي يدع اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين فويل للمصلين الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. In the name of God, most merciful, most compassionate. Have you seen the one who denies the deen? We get to the interpretation of it in a minute. It is he whom drives away the orphan and urges not the feeding of the needy. So woe be to those that perform salat and are indifferent to the spirit of salat, who do good only to show off and refuse to give anything, even small amount of gift, to the poor and the needy. The debate normally starts as to whether this surah is Makki or Madani. There are those who said that this is Makki, and there are others that claim partially Makki, the first 3 verses, and the last 4 verses are Madani. Exegetes or mufassirin such as Sayyid Qutb talks about this. He says, because it addresses riya, showing off, is part of the social character which has to be in Medina rather than in Mecca. No matter which view we take with regard to whether it is Makki or Madani, the central theme that runs through this chapter is to address one critical question: what is faith? And this, by the way, is something that challenged Christian theologian, Jewish theologian, and others. Is it purely a verbal utterance coupled with few ritualistic prayers? Or faith is an organic transformation that manifests itself in one's relationship with the divine and one's responsibility with people around? Particularly the deprived and the oppressed. Which one? Is faith a confessional issue? One affirms and proclaims adherence and devotion to a faith's doctrine. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, ashhadu anna Aliyan waliyullah. That's it. Or is faith an integration of the proclamation and action together? Is Islam orientated purely on ritual, or Islam is a way of life that incorporates worship, which is the relationship, that's the component between us and the divine, individual obligation, and social responsibility, which is a wholesale approach to a way of life that we cannot cherry pick. Well, I do prayer, then I can do a lot of other things that is forbidden. نؤمن ببعض ونكفر ببعض. We practice some of them and we reject others. This has been rejected and refused. The theme that proclamation, statement, and action must go together, faith and action must go together, is something that runs through many passages in the Holy Quran. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Iman has no meaning if it's not incorporated with practical sense. If I claim allegiance to the principles and to the doctrines, and yet I am a habitual sinner, liar, and backbiter, and so on, they don't merge, they don't go together. So let's start. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Iman and amal must go together. So the answer to the question, what is faith? From Islamic point of view, faith is an organic way of life that brings and incorporates or merges together a number of components. First, our relationship with the divine, our relationship with ourselves, And none of these will be complete if our relationship and responsibilities, social relationship and responsibilities, is ignored and not taken care of. So let us start with this surah, Al-Ma'un. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ. Have you seen? It's a way of questioning those of you who are familiar with Socratic kind of dialogue. If you listen and read Socrates and the way he debates with his students, and he starts by presenting and posing a unique question to the student so that it somehow attracts the student to provide an answer. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ. Have you seen the one who denies deen? Earlier I said we will address it in a minute. There are a number of opinions about deen. Day of judgment certainly is relevant. A person who does not believe in the day of judgment can commit huge number of sins. Reward and punishment, definitely. If you don't believe that one day one has to stand up and be either rewarded for the good deed or punished for the bad deed, then one is at liberty to do whatever one wants. Moral responsibility and social action, certainly. Principle right and wrong, definitely. Because one has to ask what kind of human being rejects and dishonors an orphan when they come to you for help. This is something, although the scholars have already indicated that this was Sha'n al-Nuzul was about Abu Sufyan, because he was wealthy and used to slaughter a huge amount of animal and enjoy, or as we use the term these days, organize a barbecue and then enjoy it between himself and other friends of his and colleagues. And when orphans came to him, he was extremely harsh with them to send them out and not allow them to come near. But it doesn't matter, it's academic whether it came toward specifically about Abu Sufyan or anybody else. The verse itself generally portrayed the image of an irresponsible person who is heartless, callous, and has no mercy for the poor and the needy, and particularly the orphan. It's trying to push us to ask question: what kind of a person would do that? What kind of a person would drive an orphan or prevent or discourage others from helping the needy and the poor and the destitute? Only the one that rejects the deen and rejects the judgment day and accountability, etc. This dynamic between rejecting the hereafter and committing sins is a recurring theme that goes through the Holy Quran. فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى وَأَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْعُسْرَى. As for those who give in charity and are God conscious and has faith, they will have extreme ease in the hereafter. And for those who are miser, tight-fisted, heedless of the judgment day and reject faith, we will pave the way for him or them for extreme hardship. You see the relationship, the dynamic. Rejecting the hereafter and committing sin and being heartless, callous when it comes to your social responsibility, and believing in the hereafter, and also God conscious and being generous when it comes to supporting of the poor and the needy. These are two, and the consequences are clearly established. فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمِ. The person who rejects The hereafter is the one that pushes, drives away with force the orphans. Da''a in Arabic language means to push and shove with force. يَوْمَ يُدَعُّونَ إِلَى نَارَ جَهَنَّمَ دَعًّا. The day will come in which they are being pushed with force towards fire. This is the concept. So far, we are beginning to get the picture. Only a person that has no belief in the hereafter, in accountability, and I think this was some of the issues that early on we talked about the surah of Makkis. They focused on the three principles of Tawheed, Nubuwwah, and Ma'ad, constantly reminding people that life here is just an aberration, that ultimately one has to stand and be question and answer for it. So this, the social obligation and social responsibility is something that one has to be conscious of. Why? Because on the day of judgment you will be asked. Now we go and the theme continues about completing the image of such a person, a callous person. وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. This heartless individual, not only he prevents and doesn't give, does not encourage others or prevent others even from providing support and sustenance to the poor and the needy, and urges not the feeding of the poor. Here, similar, the verse restates the negative, since what is the above person look like? The maltreatment of the poor, the oppressed, the orphans. And these are, if they do that, they are less inclined to be sympathetic towards the marginalized and the poor. If people deny faith and the day of judgment, it leads to arrogance. أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. I am the Lord. Why? Because I have a little bit of money, I have position, I have power. And they lead a life, selfish life, that they treat the helpless people with contempt, even if they prayed. This is the point that now the verse is moving to. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. It is possible, according to the understanding of the Quran, that people have two faces, the outer life and the inner life. In front of the people, to show riya, image, establish an image, you'll pretend, or I pretend, to be holier than holy and pray. But the main point is that this prayer is devoid of the true spirit that it has to be there. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Severe punishment will be for those who perform prayer, yet they are neglectful of their prayers. What does it mean? The spirit of the prayer is absent. If the prayers are performed without the heart and the mind being synchronized for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that prayer is useless and meaningless. This is why we see there is a hadith from the Holy Prophet, particularly with regard to riya. سَيَأْتِي عَلَى النَّاسِ زَمَانٌ, that there is a difference between سَرَائِرْهُمْ and عَلَانِيَتُهُمْ. That khabith and dark is their inner relationship, and very polished is the outside. يَكُونُ دِينُهُمْ رِيَاء. Their faith is nothing more than ostentation and showing off. يَعَمُّهُمُ اللَّهُ بِعَقَابٍ فَيَدْعُونَهُ دُعَاءَ الْغَرِيقِ فَلَا يُسْتَجِيبُ لَهُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to punish them with a severe punishment. And even if they ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of desperation with all the heart, Allah is not going to respond. Why? Because there is a dichotomy between the inner and the outer. ألا إن كل رياء شرك. Any riya, ostentation, trying to show off, perform prayer for the people to tell you that how good you are, and then when you go home, your relationship with your children, with your parents, with your wife, with your partners, and so on, are totally absent, in a sense that you are harsh when it comes to inner life and very polished outside. الذين هم يراءون ويمنعون الماعون. They are those who put on riya and pretentious display to show off, and those others, and prevent others, and are stingy even in ordinary sense, that preventing others from act of charity and love towards the needy and the destitute. So not only they themselves not help, they prevent others. No, we have it, they have it, and so on. We have seen it even within our own community. These are people that follow the ritual of the prayer, but their hearts are empty. There is no empathy and sympathy towards the poor and disadvantaged and unfortunate within their own community. Their prayers are drained of the spirit. Why? Because as-salat mi'rajul mu'min, it should elevate. Once it becomes purely ritualistic, devoid and drained of the spirit that it should have, then it's useless. It becomes riya, and riya becomes shirk. And this is something that the Holy Prophet in his hadith talked about. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during these times, challenging times, to help us. As I said last night at the end of the lecture, Marhum Mutahari used to say, before you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give you something, ask Allah to take some of the negative traits that we have away. Ask Allah first to remove the sins, to help you get rid of backbiting, to help you get rid of suspicion, to help you get rid of slander, to help you get rid of lying, cheating, etc., etc. First, we have to empty the heart of batil before we allow the haqq to settle and the image of the Lord to get into the heart. So let us, all of us, pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us that privilege during these days, whatever left of the month, almost a third of it is gone. And as usual, during these challenging times, we really are indebted to those who put themselves in front of everybody else and risk their lives. And this is not an easy thing to do. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant them health and protect them from all calamities. And inshallah, together we work, we do our parts, they do their parts. We see through this difficult and pressing times and look back and learn something from it. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.